Mr. Robert Bush, you're a founding partner of Majlis Partners based in Dubai, and you've also recently opened up an office over in Germany. Can you explain your role?
Yes, as the founding partner, we are responsible for helping develop the strategy and develop the business out. Majlis Partners was founded a little over 2 years ago in order to help family businesses, institutions, and government-related entities here in the Middle East think differently about their risk management strategies, their investment programs, the financial opportunities that exist for them both in the region and globally.
How do you define risk?
Well, that's very interesting because what we've seen over the last almost 10 years that everyone's has been very interested in chasing return, 25% return, double-digit returns, and people forgot to ask the risk question. So if I were to say to you, I'll give you 25% return on your money, that sounds quite exciting. But if I were to say to you, there's a 1 in 4 chance that you're going to lose all of your money, it doesn't sound as exciting anymore, but it's the same probability. So if you think of risk as probability, then you are a little bit more conservative when you realize that there's a cost to that return. So we think it's much more conservative in light of the crisis to think much more about the risks that we're willing to accept and then look to see if we're happy with the return and not the other way around.
What kind of risks do you see in your business?
Well, traditionally, our clients and partners have thought about risk in a very sort of traditional way, which is there are financial risks, there's operational risks, there's strategic risks, reputational risks, etc. And that obviously makes a lot of sense, but we tend to think about it at a slightly different level, but incorporating that type of approach. We think that risk should be thought of with regards to orders of magnitude. There's the risk of first-degree magnitude, there are risks of second-degree magnitude, and there are risks of third-degree magnitude. And the risks of first-degree magnitude are those risks that directly impact your business, those risks that are going to have an impact on your product or on your profits, and through which you can have some control over mitigating. The second-degree risks are the kinds of risks that happen in your ecosystem, with your competitors or within your supply chain. So, for example, your competitor changes his pricing policy, so that might have an impact on what your pricing policy is. And the third layer or risk of magnitude are the big industry, the big macroeconomic risks. If the currency fails, or if the ruler of the country or the president of a country makes a certain pronouncement that affects the global economy. And so when you're thinking about risk, yes, the financial, operational, strategic things are important, but you have to remember that they will have varying degrees of magnitude. And many of from the crisis we can see, many of the things that affected family businesses and sovereign wealth businesses actually didn't have a lot to do with the first degree, the risk that they could control. They were second and third level risks.
So how do you control risks on so many different levels?
It's a challenge. I think you start with, what are you the natural owner of? Where do you have a competitive advantage with regards to risk mitigation? The endowments that you have in your company or with your team or with the relationships that you bring to bear. How are you able to create a competitive advantage over others so that you have more insight than your competitors? And so you really have to think about your skills and your skill set. And if you can manage and mitigate that risk through your own competencies, then you may be a natural owner of that risk. And if you're not, you have to then find others and you transfer that risk out, because if there are others who are able to manage it better than you, then you should allow them to do so. But it's no free lunch. You will have to pay for others to take that risk off of your balance sheet or out of your business. But it is better to pay for someone else who's an expert and manage a particular risk. But we always have to keep in mind, it's not fully mitigated. It's not fully eliminated, it's only mitigated.
Okay, so how would you make sure your partners, clients, employees understand the risks they're facing?
What we've seen is there are 4 negative archetypes. The first is a partner or perhaps an employee who has an active disregard for risk. They are gaming you. They're using the fact that your systems and processes aren't necessarily in place, to make money for themselves, to distinguish themselves in the organization. This is where you get a lot of the rogue trading kinds of activity, where they know the risk, they just have an active disregard for it. The second type of negative archetype we've seen is the sweeping under the rug, where I'm just afraid. I don't want to confront it. I don't really know what to do, so I'd rather hide it and push it under. Maybe someone else will find it, but I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. And what you find in some markets and in some of the cultural, there's a cultural issue. You know, I'm afraid that if I'm the messenger, I'll be shot. And since I don't have a solution, I don't want to be the person to raise it as a concern, so I'd rather say nothing. So you've got the second archetype, which is sweeping it under the rug. The third is more just the passive. They don't really know what to do. They're hoping that someone else will solve it, and so they just do nothing. And then the last is ignorance. And this is, they haven't really thought about it. It's not that they don't know they're being passive about it. It's just that they have never been properly educated, or they've never recognized how to identify it, etc. So with those four, it is very difficult. So when you're actually having a discussion about a finance or an investment opportunity, you have to have a very conversationally rich dialogue with your partners, with your team, not just about the opportunity itself, but how they think about risk and which of the four buckets that they might be in. Are they disregarding it? Are they passive about it? Are they ignorant about it? Or are they sweeping it under the rug? Because that's often where deals will go wrong, is that not only was the opportunity not right, but we weren't right for the opportunity. And there was a challenge in doing that. So you really have to make sure that there's a proper risk culture where you can have a real dialogue with your stakeholders, with your shareholders, with your employees, with your partners, to make sure that everyone knows that we share the responsibility for this investment, and no one should be ostracized or criticized when they have a concern about how the business may or may not go.